Thanks, Jeremy. I don't recall ever sharing my 8-track collection with you, but apparently you know about it. Now we'd like to bring up our next panel discussion about natural gas end users and efforts on keeping it local. Joining me on stage will be Mike Jacoby, Bill Seidowitz, and Mike Chadsey. I'll give you some bios for them while they get their pictures taken over there. Mike Jacoby is the Vice President of Business Development at the Appalachian Partnership for Economic Growth. APEG is Jobs Ohio's regional nonprofit affiliate charged with supporting and coordinating economic development across 25 counties in southern and eastern Ohio. A significant portion of his time is devoted to shale energy projects. Mike has more than 20 years of experience of economic development in Ohio and at the local, regional, and state level. Bill Seidowitz is founder and president of Clean Energy Future, or CEF. CEF is dedicated to implementing non-utility gas-fired electric production facilities. Mr. Seidowitz has been developing non-utility power projects for 17 years. To date, that includes 35 projects with a collective capacity of over 14,000 megawatts. By the end of 2017, CEF will complete 5 such projects in Ohio, representing about a $4.5 billion investment. Mike Chadsey serves as Director of Public Relations for OOGA. In that capacity, he leads OOGA's media outreach efforts and continues the association's great work creating and building relationships with local elected, community, and business leaders. Prior to joining OOGA, Mike served as the first state director of Energy in Depth Ohio, a grassroots advocacy, research, and education initiative organized in support of responsible oil and gas development. Mike has served in a variety of roles both at the local and state level, working for various campaigns and office holders since 1997. Mike, Bill, and Mike. Who's going to go first?
Mike, you're up.
Okay, Mike. Do you want me up here?
Yeah, you can sit here if you want. Oh, wait, thanks.
Well, thank you very much, Dave. Just want to give you a little background on Jobs Ohio and the Appalachian Partnership for Economic Growth, or APEG. Jobs Ohio is a private nonprofit corporation that was organized and created in 2011 to lead economic development efforts in the state of Ohio. APEG was created shortly thereafter as also a nonprofit organization, and we are the regional network partner for Jobs Ohio for 25 counties in southeast Ohio. If you look at your display, it's the green area shaded on the map. It's almost 1/3 of Ohio's land mass. In 2016, Jobs Ohio assisted companies in capital projects that created 20,600 jobs, or will create 20,600 jobs. We use a variety of tools to assist companies, including a site and building database to help companies find locations to build facilities or occupy space. We have a variety of financial incentive tools to use to bring companies to Ohio when there's competition with another state. We have experienced managing directors that represent the different sectors that we focus on, and they can help connect companies with specialized resources, and we have liaison to state regulatory agencies to assist them through the permitting process. Since Jobs Ohio's creation, we have supported companies that have created over 104,000 jobs in the state of Ohio and invested over $27 billion in fixed assets. We focus on 9 sectors at Jobs Ohio. Shale and petrochemicals, which is highlighted on the slide, is one of our key focus areas. And at the box on the bottom right, I'll just run through a few quick examples of key projects from recent history. We assisted Amazon locate data centers and fulfillment centers in Ohio that will create 2,100 jobs. We have been working for 3 years now with PTT Global Chemical for their proposed ethane cracker in Belmont County, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Chinese company Fuyao Glass bought an old GM facility outside of Dayton, and they are now making windshields for the automotive sector, and they're going to employ 2,000 people at that facility. and GE located a global operations center in the Cincinnati area that will create 1,400 jobs. Now to talk specifically about shale and petrochemicals, and our efforts to promote downstream development in shale and petrochemicals. We'll get to this slide. This slide will probably be familiar to a lot of you in the audience. The Marcellus and the Utica shales are responsible for 85% of natural gas production growth in the United States since 2012. The two shale plays, commonly referred to as the Appalachian Basin, currently are producing 22.6 billion cubic feet of gas per day. And that production is expected to reach between 29 and 33 BCF a day by 2022. Again, this is probably something you all are very familiar with, but the gas from this basin is very competitively priced to other natural gas sources around the world, cheaper than LNG gas that's being sent to Japan, cheaper than natural gas in the European Union, and actually at a discount to Henry Hub priced natural gas here in the United States. On the liquid side of production, natural gas liquids in the basin, current production is about 740,000 barrels a day, and that is predicted to reach 1.2 million barrels a day of production. If we can find markets for those products regionally, there could be a savings of roughly 15 cents a gallon or more versus piping that to the Gulf of Mexico. And that equates to roughly about $6.30 per barrel price advantage if we consume that here in the basin. This slide is leading into a discussion about kind of the niches that Ohio can go after to keep more of this product and use more of this product in the basin. The previous two slides showed how we have an abundant supply and very competitive pricing for fuel and for feedstock. And this slide shows where Ohio was kind of pre-Utica shale horizontal drilling and the boom there. We do have Chesapeake Energy represented at the top there, but this is looking before 2011. And so early adopters, I don't adequately represent the traditional conventional vertical wells in the state, but needless to say, for over 100 years, Ohio has had an oil and gas industry, and we've had a lot of the downstream producers of polymers, plastics, adhesives, specialty chemicals, and that's represented there in the bottom for the end markets. Okay, so this slide now represents today, and it reflects Ohio's current petrochemical value chain. And specifically, if you look at the top tier, it's showing the exploration production companies at the top. And as you move down to the next tier, you've got midstream processors and fractionators, and also storage, underground storage. And I will note that we have a recent addition to this slide with Mountaineer NGLs, which has proposed an underground NGL storage facility in Monroe County. Because of cheap natural gas, Potash Corp has expanded their fertilizer plant in Lima, Ohio, with the help of Jobs Ohio. Jobs Ohio has also helped a new plant that you may have seen under construction on Route 23, US 23, south of Columbus, near Circleville, Ohio. They've got a massive plant under construction. And Jobs Ohio assisted with a lengthy pipeline extension so that this company could use natural gas in its process. Other recent developments, Marathon has improved its Canton refinery to consume more feedstocks from the Utica Shale. PTT Global Chemical of Thailand has invested over $100 million on front-end engineering and design for a world-scale ethane cracker in Belmont County. Final investment decision on whether or not they go forward with that project is expected later this year. These investments represent about $30 billion in capital improvements in Ohio, and Jobs Ohio is actively working to fill the remaining boxes where we think there are opportunities in green. In the back, you may have trouble reading those, but Jobs Ohio, I have 2 colleagues right now that are in Houston at CERAWeek. They're meeting with petrochemical companies. We have active leads in propylene. We have active leads in methanol, as well as some other petrochemical projects. And I will be at the American Fuel and Petrochemicals Manufacturers meeting in San Antonio in a couple of weeks. And I just want to point out that these projects, the large petrochemical projects, no surprise, they take a long time to come to fruition. And there's a lot of reasons for that. One is they typically want a large site. They typically want to be on the Ohio River where they can move components in on barge. There are significant design times. There are significant permitting times. I challenge you to find a greenfield site, a large greenfield site on the Ohio River that is above the floodplain or not a hillside or has not had some other brownfield use. And all this has to come together in a business model that will be supported by the credit markets. So it just takes a long time to put these together. On the fuel side of things, downstream use has developed much more quickly. There are 9 gas-fired power plants that are either under construction, in permitting, or have been announced in Ohio. And this slide just demonstrates that most of those dots you see there are natural gas-fired electric generation capacity projects. There are some renewables reflected on that map, but most of that new generation is from natural gas. It may not be a surprise to anybody in the audience, but Ohio has shut down over 5,700 megawatts of coal-fired electric generation capacity in recent years. That number is there will be more units shutting down, more coal-fired units likely shutting down, and natural gas units are obviously increasing and will consume or will make more and more of the electricity that we all use. We've got a speaker who's going to address that in more detail in near future. I will turn this over to, I don't know if it's Mike or Bill going next. Bill, okay, well, perfect timing then. Bill, you can talk about electricity from natural gas.
Thank you. I guess I would be one of the living examples of Jobs Ohio in action. We were developing a large-scale gas-fired power project in Oregon, Ohio, up next to Toledo. And over the course of about a 2 or 2.5 year development cycle, just like some of these large petrochemical plants, you eventually run into some stumbling blocks. And those stumbling blocks reside sometimes in Columbus. And so thanks to Jobs Ohio and Dana, who is maybe not here today, was really our eyes and ears on the ground here in Columbus to help us get over a few rough spots that eventually resulted in the project breaking ground in November of 2014. We just fired up our first turbine actually yesterday, and the plant will be fully operational in May of this year. But my topic today is entitled Non-Utility Power Generation and Low-Cost Shale Gas. It's a game changer. And this is something that a lot of people don't know when we speak to those who are in the legislature, and we'll talk why that's important. For the last multiple decades, the only electricity generation that was built in Ohio was done by law through monopolies. That includes companies you're quite familiar with, First Energy, AEP, Dayton and Power and Light. And they built these plants based on a cost plus or a cost pass-through basis with a guaranteed rate of return on equity and obviously enough recovery for all their debt. Well, the world has changed since 1999 when the state legislature enacted deregulation. And that's just a fancy way of saying we want to go to a marketplace where people can benefit from competition and we no longer have a monopoly system. Now, I guess I need to figure out how to advance the slides. Is that the green one? Oh, there we go. And so my hope today is just to give you a little background about what's going on in this crazy business called electricity generation, because we've had a wholesale change that's occurred starting in 1999. And this is sort of what's happened in the recent past, and that is that we have basically, as a non-utility sector, come into the state of Ohio, and as was mentioned earlier, our company will have brought about $4.5 billion of new construction into Ohio by the end of 2017. And that's made possible by the fact that over 10,000 megawatts of coal, some of it has been around since the 50s and 60s, has shut down because it simply has met the end of its useful life. But more importantly, it is no longer economical to make electricity from coal. And that's driven by the fact that we have some of the lowest cost natural gas in the entire United States emanating from Ohio, Northwest West Virginia, and Western PA, generically called South Point. While all that was going on, which is the shutting down of these coal plants, we've had almost an equal replacement of those coal plants with gas-fired plants. And they're not being built by First Energy, nor AEP, nor Dayton and Power and Light. And that's because their cost structure is simply too high. And we have moved into the space, and we call ourselves IPPs, Independent Power Producers. So that's just a generic name you'll hear a lot over the coming months. So basically, that monopoly system that was in place for multiple decades has shown to be not competitive. And so we look at what's going on in the world today and notice that there's this replacement going on, but we also look further down the road and we notice that there's much more coal still that has to be shut down over the course of time, as well as overly expensive nuclear plants. And we've put those numbers on the slide here. So basically another 13,500 megawatts of coal and basically just over 2,000 megawatts of nuclear, which are the two plants up on Lake Erie, of course. I'm sure for the last half a day and into tomorrow, you might be talking about natural gas. Where does it go? Well, we're here to say that we hope that we'll be one of the biggest customers of all this natural gas that's being produced in Ohio and used in Ohio. And this slide is really just meant to give you a perspective on how big are we. And again, I'm speaking in terms of millions of BTUs, and I know that many of you think in terms of cubic feet of gas, so I'm sure you know the appropriate conversion. But basically, once these plants are turned on and you hit that switch in a go position, the power plant is going full bore. And our economics show that in today's economic world in Ohio, the plants that we're building today are so efficient that they basically won't shut down. We would call that a baseload plant. It'll run 90% of the time plus. So just to put some numbers in perspective for you, a typical large plant that we're talking about today is about 1,000 megawatts. And so in terms of how much gas do we use, the numbers you see there on the slide, about 145,000 MMBTUs per day, and because we're base loaded, about 50 million BTUs per year. And so if we look at the 11,000 megawatts that are basically either built already, in construction, or advanced development, we're looking at a need, as we show, about 556 million BTUs per year. And if we look forward again and look at the day when we displace that existing coal that we know is uneconomical, and that's another 666, this is the need that we're talking about from the power generation business here in Ohio. So it's over 1,000 million BTUs per year. So if we just made the math real simple for all of us and assumed that gas was selling at $3 per million BTUs, we're talking about $3.6 billion a year, year after year after year, that we need to run these plants. And a plant like this will typically last 50 to 60 years. So it doesn't take much rocket science to figure out that these are huge consumptive uses of natural gas that bring with it all the economic development that revolves around an energy plant. Of course, these plants have incredible economic benefit unto themselves, and so the intent of this slide here is to talk about how big of an economic impact do we have potentially on the state of Ohio. Again, if we looked at those plants that have already been built or in development, and we add on to that the additional plants we're going to need to displace the old coal, we basically are looking at about 25 of these large-scale power plants that need to go into the state of Ohio. So we've tried to put that into perspective for everyone in that third bullet where we talk about how much capital is needed to build these plants. Well, if we were to build 25 plants, we need about $30 billion of new capital. And of course, you need a construction force to build these because each plant takes about 2.5 years to build. And we do the math on what we know a plant costs, multiply it out. That's about 40 million man-hours of union construction labor. And of course, once they're built, you need an operating staff, and we project that to be about 500 full-time jobs. And again, the ripple effect from property tax, salary tax, local goods and services, local construction goods, ongoing income tax being paid, local distribution services for movement of gas, for example, coming across Dominion East Ohio, or purchasing the gas itself. All 25 projects over the course of 40 years would be about $350 billion with a B. So again, what we're doing is much like what happens in the oil and gas business. We don't go around looking for subsidies from the government, whether it be the federal government, state government, county government, the cities that we work in. This is all private capital that comes to Ohio based on an open and competitive marketplace. The reason that this has become so popular and so beneficial relates to what happens to the ultimate use of that electricity, whether it be a residence, a commercial customer, or an industrial customer. And through re-regulation, we've allowed power generation, that 1/3 of the price ticket for electricity. Transmission and distribution will always be controlled by monopoly pricing, but generation is in its own little category. And I'd be curious, we can, if I had time, but we are short of time today. I'm sure you've all seen Geico ads. Take 15 minutes and save 15%. We do this whenever we buy commodities, whether it be house insurance, car insurance, gasoline, groceries to some extent. Electricity is no different. Thankfully, the state of Ohio, through the Utility Commission, has created a website, and I've put it on the slide here. It's called www.energychoice.ohio.gov. I can guarantee you that if you have not switched away from your local utility company in Ohio, you're paying too much, on the order of probably 20 to 25% of the generation cost of electricity. A typical customer, a residential customer in Ohio, pays probably 5.3 to 5.7 cents per kilowatt hour for that generation portion. And if you go on this website, which is called Apples to Apples, I think you'll find that you can buy that very same electricity for about 4 to 4.1 cents. So when you think about how much power you use over the course of a year, every household will save probably $250 minimum by simply going onto a free website sponsored by the state of Ohio, taking about 10 minutes to provide your account number to someone with one of these companies, and all of a sudden you have instantaneous savings. Well, if we take that same math that we know we've done for a number of different residential properties here in Ohio, and you extrapolate out that if every home in Ohio, which is about 4.6 million homes, did the same thing, residential users would save about $1 billion a year. And of course, in the world of electricity, commercial and industrial users use about the same number of kilowatt hours as the entire residential population. So the real savings is 3 times that, which is about $3 billion a year. which is the benefit of going away from monopoly systems and into free enterprise systems. Well, it just so happens that OSU did a study most recently, and they published results in January. And what did they say? The general public can save $3 billion a year by switching and bypassing away from their host utility that they've known for decades. This is the true mechanism called free market system and free market economics. It's something that provides value and benefit to every user of electricity. And we've also polled various, through different polling systems to ask people, are you interested in maintaining this customer choice to allow savings? And the return response is always overwhelming, on the order of 5 and 6 to 1. Yes, we want to be able to buy our electricity from wherever we want to, just like we can do it for our groceries, our insurance, whatever commodity we're looking to buy. And the reason that's important is that there's a change afoot in the legislative session in 2017. And part of that legislative change is that the utilities, which now have noticed that some of their market share is going away, want to change the system here in Ohio. And it comes in a couple forms. One that you'll hear about is a nuclear subsidy. First Energy would like basically their ratepayers to provide them $300 million a year to keep these old antiquated systems online for another year until they find a new buyer, which they announced last week that they're looking to do next year. So needless to say, our entire industry that uses natural gas is against such a crazy idea, to basically cause someone to have to pay $300 million a year against their own will. On top of that, you'll hear about another initiative called re-regulation or restructuring. And all that is a utility company, a group of them, all three of them, saying, we don't like the idea that we're, in essence, being pushed out of the business because our costs are too high. So we just as soon not compete with these folks and provide low-cost electricity. We like the old model from decades ago where we could build anything for anything we want and just force that to be the market price. So we're going to re-regulate or restructure and go back to a monopoly system. So I'm here today to ask for the support of those who are in the oil and gas business who want that business to stay here in Ohio, to be used in productive facilities, to become quite active. Active in such a way that you're involved in communicating with your state senators and state representatives to let them know what you think about, in essence, turning the clock back to 1998 and taking away, in essence, a free enterprise system. And again, you'll be having this, I assume, as part of the conference proceedings, so I don't want to get into too many numbers because it's late in the afternoon and this tends to be sleepy talk. So what I'll do is just quickly go over a couple of these points and then move on because we do have another speaker for the panel. But one of the reasons that we find ourselves in this predicament with the utilities trying to, in essence, push us out of business is that they themselves have tried to develop these non-utility power plants, get into the competitive mode. And I've noted here a couple of the 4 different gas-fired plants that First Energy has attempted to develop, and they all failed. And the other point I wanted to make here is why gas is such a powerful, powerful tool. It goes down to the second bullet. We know from our modern plants that our variable cost of electricity is about 1.8 cents per kilowatt hour, or $18 per megawatt hour. Today's coal plants, even using today's current cost of coal, which is about $2.25 per million as we show, their cost of production is about $34 per megawatt hour, or 3.4 cents per kilowatt hour. This is about as basic 5th grade math as we can possibly look at and explain to show that coal plants basically cost twice as much as a modern gas-fired plant, largely driven by technology that has been perfected in the oil and gas business and this prolific resource called Utica and Marcellus that is right next door. So these are the raw numbers that are in play today that is causing this issue. Basically, the gas industry is becoming so efficient and so good at what they do they've made the resultant cost of electricity, in essence, rock bottom pricing. And this is the kind of differential that has caused this market to be turned upside down. I believe we might have talked about this a little bit earlier, so I won't dwell too much on this, but again, these are the issues relating to how much we bring to the market in terms of our economic benefit. But there is one bullet I would like to just put out there, because we seem to have a stumbling block with the state legislators. They're concerned and they're losing sleep, they tell us, over the fact that there may not be enough natural gas. So as we start to move away from an 85% of our system coming from coal to 50 or 60% coming from gas, the concern is that we're jumping into this pond called high efficiency gas-fired production at low costs, but somehow we're going to magically run out of gas someday. And one of the resources that I've seen, of course, is the West Virginia study that was done back in July of 15, where they talked about the size of the Utica Formation, which I think was measured in over 3,000 TCF. So to the extent this organization can help educate and provide information to state senators and state legislators on the House side as to how big this gas resource is, that would be a huge benefit, obviously, to the privatization of more low-cost electricity production facilities. And as I mentioned, in essence, the game is on as we speak today. The legislative session is back in play, of course, since the beginning of the year. We all know it's a budget year here in Ohio, so that unto itself is a very active time. But I can assure you that each of the three utilities are spending endless amounts of money to basically put us out of business so they can go back to monopoly economics. So my point here is that this is not something that's being done casually by the other side, but instead I just saw the list the other day of First Energy's 17 lobbyists who are working, in essence, in Columbus to get their way. We talked about two different issues that are sort of surfacing. One is we just heard about literally a week ago, so it's not in my slide deck, and this is the issue about having a subsidy for, in essence, keeping open the Davis-Besse and Perry nuclear plants. At $300 million a year, that times 20 years, that's $6 billion that they want as a bailout at First Energy. In fact, their proposal that we heard about is not for 20 years, it's basically forever. So if it goes on for 60 years, then of course the number gets multiplied by 3, so it's only $18 billion. And if we go back to the re-regulation, which is basically has three components as we note in this slide, they want to get, in essence, reimbursed for the cost of a coal plant relative to a gas plant, which is about $22 billion. They basically want to push us out of business and not allow us to build any more free enterprise systems, and we know their cost of doing business is far higher than ours, which is why they can't do it today, and we estimate that to be about $20 billion. And the Ohio State study shows that, in essence, customer choice, which is free ability to select from the marketplace, saves people $3 billion a year. So just over 20 years, that's another $60 billion that would go away because customer choice would disappear under re-regulation and restructuring. So if you simply add up 1, 2, and 3, you end up with a number that's $100 billion. So that's really what's at stake. And again, we're hoping today that we can chat with folks who are involved in your side of the business to give us a helping hand to help educate state senators and House members as to what's at work here. Of course, this is somewhat of a game of semantics when we start talking about the legislature. So it's probably not terribly exciting for a utility to come in and say, hey, we need a bailout, we need a handout. Those are just too confronting and too obvious. So you'll see lots of different words that are being used in the media and news reports about what they're really asking for. So I've just tried to list some of these synonyms that you'll see. So again, this is not a game for children. It's something that's being played at the highest levels with all the public relations firms and all kinds of focus groups to find out what words fit and feel good so that those in the legislature can be convinced to hand out through the ratepayer hundreds of billions of subsidy. And of course, one of the difficult parts of this whole process is one that's very troubling on many levels, which is basically the pay-to-play system that is in place, which is there is no limit to what, in essence, a utility can provide to state legislators in terms of contributions to their reelection campaign and other consideration. And so that's part of what we face also. None of us have the resources of the three big utilities in Ohio. So those are some of the challenges that we see. And I just wanted to bring these topics to the top of the table so that you can appreciate what's going on. And hopefully here in the coming months, you can help us help you in terms of having an outlet for your natural gas. So with that, I'll turn the mic over to our third speaker and step aside.
Thank you, Bill. It's an honor to be on the panel with Bill and Mike today, and David, thank you for that introduction. And I look forward to continuing our conversation about 8-track and records afterwards. I look forward to learning a little bit more about that. So I'm here today to talk about Shell Crescent. For those in the room who have been to this website and who have seen this video, that's outstanding. I want to bring it, for those of you who have not seen it, want to bring you up to speed a little bit about this entire effort and what we're doing to talk about what's at stake here in the Mid-Ohio Valley and what resources we have that we can bring to bear and market this effort. And in doing so, I want to point out a few folks in the audience because there are a few of you here that can really benefit from having this information as you travel the state and the country. Representative Al Landis, this information will be very helpful to you in talking with folks that want to expand their business and possibly locate here. And that also applies to Todd from Senator Rob Portman's office, Tim from Congressman Gibbs' office, Nick from Congressman Joyce's office, Sarah from Congressman Johnson's office, and Monica from Lieutenant Governor Mary Taylor's office. Folks, as you talk with your elected officials and you travel around the state, this is this information that you can use to help draw these businesses here, or if they're already here, expand them, the resources that are available. So just quickly moving through, what is this effort all about? So the mission at Shell Crescent is an economic development initiative to encourage business growth in the Mid-Ohio Valley based upon low natural gas prices that allow manufacturers to operate more efficiently while producing products more economically with access to water and over half the population in the United States. So that's what we're doing. Here's what we're trying to get at: attracting manufacturing to industries to the Mid-Ohio Valley. Now, there's certainly a lot of activity being discussed, and you heard Mike, all the great efforts that they're doing to attract those high-end users here. And as you heard from the presentation before, what we can actually do, think of all those products that were in that presentation that could possibly be made here in the state of Ohio or in the Appalachian Basin. Create a quality of life and high-wage jobs. And that's also something that's very valuable to our elected officials, not only talking about promoting oil and gas, but also manufacturing. That's a great tool for them to talk about as they travel around the country. Expand downstream industry investments and improve our tax infrastructure. More businesses, more employers, more employees paying taxes into local, state, and government, federal government, and just helping to advance our causes. So what changed? What's the difference here? As you've heard from other presenters throughout the course of the day, and you go all the way back in this slide from 1970 up to about 2010, and you see the dramatic increase beyond that. It's that amount of natural gas that were being produced in Ohio, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia. And as you've heard folks like Jerry James and Brian and Christy Chavez talk about as the leaders of this effort, if you put those three states together as a country, it'd be the third largest natural gas producer in the world. And truly, really only competing with the United States, because some of the other producers are Russia and some countries in the Middle East. Not always very stable, not very close to markets, may not have a skilled workforce, and may not have access to water. So we're really only competing with the United States. And when you break that down, what does that really mean? Well, that's really Texas and the Gulf Coast, because they also have the water, the access to markets, and the skilled labor, and certainly the gas. But as you see here, just in the last 5 years, what has happened? So what's the difference? What do we do with this information? And how do we market that? And what do we talk about? So our world-class advantages, right? The natural gas, as you've heard about all day today. the amount of gas being produced out of this entire basin. So what do we do with it? Now, as you can think, pipelines, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit, pipelines are a solution, but in our opinion, they're not the solution. The way we can really help you all, the producers in this room and in this entire building, is keep this closest to the wellhead. That's how you benefit. Water, plenty of water in the Ohio River for your manufacturing process. But also, and this is the obvious one, to bring raw goods in and finished product out. And you add that with the extensive road and rail network that is in the Mid-Ohio Valley, you can get your product anywhere. And that leads me to the last point, markets. Because of our proximity to places like Chicago and New York and many other places, we're within a day's drive to half of the population. And this is the thing that puts it all together, is because of the abundant natural gas, we're facing the lowest natural gas prices in the industrialized world. So what do we do with that? We go out and we talk to folks not only in the Appalachian Basin and in North America, but around the world, because that is not something that's seen in a lot of places. So we can take all the information and market it and talk about how we have the lowest natural gas prices. So the states of Ohio, West Virginia, and PA will account for 35, potentially 40% of the natural gas production by 2020. And you'll hear a little bit more about that as I end with the video in just a moment. Proximity to market, again, just to emphasize that 50% of the population was in a day's drive. So to sum it up, and then I'll bring to the video, access to one of the largest natural gas supplies in the entire United States, lowest natural gas prices in the developing world, abundant fresh water supply for process, and the other part, transportation to the rest of the world, from the Ohio River to the Mississippi to the Gulf. You can go anywhere you need. 50% of North American markets within a day's drive. So with that, I want to turn to the video, which is only about 3 minutes, and it's also available to you to share with the folks that you work with and will talk with, and there's also some reporters in the room. This is a great video for you to understand exactly what we're doing and why we're doing it. And as I got involved in this effort and I started to talk with Jerry and Dave Hill and Brian and Christy and Sean, talking a little bit about what we're doing and how we're doing it, and I asked the question why we're doing it. Well, sure, it's going to benefit the oil and gas industry. It's certainly going to benefit manufacturers. But Jerry hit on something that really resonated with me. It's the right thing to do. And that's what makes this so easy to go out and talk about in the entire country and around the world.
We are sitting on one of the largest shale plays in the United States.
The shale gas is here. We've seen the studies. It's here for the long term.
The Mid-Ohio Valley offers a world-class business opportunity. We got great water.
Maybe
access,
only one or
we
two,
got
yeah.
great natural gas
Maybe only one or two.
shale crescent. We have great people and we got great access to markets. That is the game changer.
Shale Crescent USA is the center of the universe when it comes to the oil and gas explosion that's going to hit this country.
The largest natural gas reserve that we see in the United States is situated right here, and that's in the Marcellus Shale and Utica Shale.
The shale gas is here. We've seen the studies. It's here for the long term. It's a great thing for our business. It gives us a competitive advantage.
This is a world-class asset for any energy-intensive industry. I mean, it's a strategic opportunity.
We're able to not only generate the steam that we need to operate our plant, but we're also able to generate a third of our electricity as well.
I would say by 2020, we're looking to account for 35, and that could even be 40% of the total U.S. natural gas production is going to be right here. One of the greatest assets of the Mid-Ohio Valley is the Ohio River. You know, people don't realize how big the Ohio River is.
The Ohio River gives you options in terms of receiving raw materials and then delivering goods. I mean, you can go to the Gulf. From the Gulf, you can go anywhere in the world.
So there's a lot of places in the world where there's not enough fresh water to support a large petrochemical industry. That's not the case in the Mid-Ohio Valley. You have barge access. You have a lot of way to get raw materials in on the river. You can ship final product out on the river. You have a strong rail network for shipping product or bringing products in. You have very good highway access within a day's drive to 50% of the U.S. market. The Mid-Ohio Valley is located very close to a large market in North America. We have some of the best contractors in the world that are nearby. Mid-Ohio Valley workforce, you know, that's people that are really dedicated and they're happy to be here. They want to
So that's it. That's what we're doing. And it's an all-volunteer effort, like I said, being led by Jerry and many other folks, and I'm happy to participate in that. This video that you just saw was taken to a very large international manufacturing event in Germany, and Jerry and a few folks are taking this video to Houston to the World Petrochemical Conference in just a couple weeks and actually sponsoring the open night reception so they can talk to as many folks as they can and have targeted the top 100 or so natural gas users companies around the world to talk about this effort. And so I'm just glad to be a part of it, and thank you for having me here today. I think we're out of time, but we may have a little bit of time for discussion or questions if there are any. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions? I think one or two quick ones.
Okay, thank you.